At 7 o'clock, July 9th, 2018, I call the Chaska Parks and Recreation Board meeting to order. Item 2 is roll call. Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Here.
Commissioner Ives.
Here.
Commissioner Grah here. Commissioner Whitrock.
Here.
Commissioner Downs.
Here.
Commissioner Branch.
Here.
Commissioner Flaherty Wilcox.
Here.
Commissioner, who are we missing? Rowan, sorry, excuse me, Commissioner Rowan. Not here. Did I get everyone? Usually you do that, and I decided to jump on top of that.
And Mahila.
Oh, sorry, and Commissioner Mahila is also absent. Thank you. Which brings us to agenda item 3, adopt the July 9th, 2018 Park Board Agenda.
So I would like to make an addition to our agenda tonight. All of you were informed via email earlier this morning of Nicholas Mason's from the board. Unfortunately, he's come up against some health concerns that's prevented him to be able to continue on the board. And so with that, one of the task force that he was on was with the City Square West Task Force, and it's vital that we have a Park and Recreation Board representative on that task force. So I want to add an agenda item. We could just add it as 7E under other business to make a recommendation to City Council for one of you to be a replacement for Nick Mason's task force position.
Any other amendments to the agenda? If not, I can take a motion to approve the agenda with the amendment of 7E, a City Square West Task Force.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
I have a motion by Commissioner Flaherty Wilcox.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Wilcox, or Whitrock, excuse me. All in favor to adopt the agenda as presented of the July 9th, 2018 Park Board with the addition of 7E, a City Square West Task Force replacement, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Agenda item 4 is visitor presentation. We have some visitors. Maybe they don't want to present yet. You don't all have to run up to the podium at the same time. I know you're excited. Okay.
Are folks here?
Come on up. There we
Are
go.
they here for 6A or no?
So my name is Tim Vosberg.
Hold on a second. Actually, you're not under visitors to be heard.
Oh,
You're going to be a different agenda.
oh,
Sorry, I encouraged them.
It's okay.
I'm off my game tonight. I tell
We're
you.
excited.
So, any other visitor presentations? Seeing none, we will move to agenda item 5, approve the minutes of the July 11th, 2018 Park Board meeting.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion I have a motion by Commissioner Whitrock, struggling with names tonight, and a second by Downs. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing no discussion, all in favor to approve the June 11th, 2018 Park Board meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And it's approved. Which now brings us to 6A, Carver Trails Chaska Chana's Mountain Bike Team, and request for recommendation to City Council to adopt a resolution to obtain approving a limited use permit through MnDOT for the construction of a multi-purpose off-road trails. Now you may come forward. I will remind you as you're coming forward to make sure you introduce yourself, who you are, and make sure you talk into the microphone. If you steer off to the sides, no one can hear you with our millions of viewers at home. So.
okay. So I'm Tim Vosberg, and do you want my address?
Certainly do, sure.
3380 Lakeshore Drive, Chaska.
Perfect, thank you.
Steve Koval, 5580 Dahlgren Road, Chaska.
So, as the proposal is read, we would like to ask for your recommendation to move this forward to the City Council But I'm here tonight, and we've got Steve. We also got another member of our project group, Scott, who's here to talk and ask, so we can answer. I'll go through the proposal and the presentation again. This is real similar to what I had last time, but I go through it kind of quickly and see if anybody has any questions or details or updates on the different facets that we've been working on. So, does that sound all right?
Sounds good.
Okay. So, first, we propose multi-use trails, okay? And when we say multi-use, for things like hiking, walking, bike riding, in the wintertime snowshoeing, cross-country skiing potentially, just walking in the wintertime too. So that's what we mean by multi-use trails. Okay then, and who we are, so we are a group of mountain bike riders mostly, but we also do other activities like snowshoeing and hiking and things like that. So our group is made up of, Steve and I are coaches for the team that we are referenced earlier. So Chaska, Chanhassen teams. We also have an Eden Prairie group now, 2 kids under us that's growing as well under our umbrella. And so we're coaches, mountain bike riders, parents of riders. Scott has a son that's been on our team for several years as well, so he's part of our project group. We have, in addition to the 3 of us, there's 2 other people on the board that we have here. One of them's Reed Conrad, and the other one that we have is Russ Rasky, and both of those are affiliated with our mountain bike group, coaches for our team. So mountain biking is growing in popularity. Our youth team has grown from 5 to, this year, we're up to about 70 some. We don't know what the final number is. We had practice, our first practice this season tonight. So also more adult riders are taking to off-road multi-use trails for safety reasons, stay away from the cars and the experience. The league has increased to over 1,200 in, I think, 7 years. It's been in existence. Winter fat biking is increasing in popularity. I don't know if people know, but fat bikes were invented right here in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, really. And so it's very, very popular and fun activity. Mountain biking is soon going to be offered in local physical education classes. We've been in contact with school officials, and if anybody has any questions around that, we can go in detail around that if anybody wishes, on our communications with the school folks there. This is not a fad. It's growing big, and Edina and Minnetonka are also working on trying to get some mountain bike trails there as well. So mountain biking trails are less than 2 feet wide, one-way, closed during wet conditions so they don't get ruts in them, and winding with elevation changes, and to keep speeds low, built using natural surface and contours, and we would be building these trails by hand ourselves.
So we had a question on the natural surfaces before, and that we're basically taking what's there and working with that. We're not hauling in anything, so.
Right. So there's a great demand for multi-use trails. Current situation is cyclists, including us, some of us, make use of the mountain bike trails at the Chaska River bottoms when it's not flooded. But we've had flooding again this year, and not hunting season, of course. And our youth teams are practicing on roads and paved paths due to the lack of trails. And we have to deal with cars, which is dangerous at times, literally. Riders must oftentimes drive to other cities to get single track trails practice in, and it's a lot different riding on single track trails than it is on the road. Trust me, it's about a lot different. So distracting drivers are a huge safety concern. So what we propose is some single-track, narrow, 18 to 24-inch wide trails through woods, around trees, and up and down hills. In the area of Pioneer Trail, Audubon, the 212 corridor. And trails would travel one way and be built to minimally intersect existing maintained trails. Trail design tactics will be used to control the speed of bikes and the environmental impact. Bicyclists will yield to walkers as instructed and will be reminded with trail signs and on our website as well. Safety signage throughout the trail will be erected, constructed. So these will be ecologically friendly trails. Trails will be built using the highest standards for developing sustainable trail guidelines. These will eliminate erosion and vegetation loss, avoid areas of uncommon plants, designed to minimize tree impact and safe, sustainable trails. And as I said, the proposed location is 212 Pioneer Trail area. We've got some maps that we produced and presented in the past, but we've got some other newer maps if anybody wants to take a look or look at the maps in detail. So the land is not currently being used. MnDOT owns the land and is willing to issue a limited use permit for 10 years. So here's one map that we presented earlier from a wide angle, high area so we're looking at, right around Pioneer Middle School there with that. And there's several pieces of land. This one shows some detail here on the different maps or different trails that we propose. And so I might add there with that, it was kind of challenging, a bit challenging for us to come up with this trail map the way it is right now because MnDOT did not want to allow us to visit and trespass on the land until we got a resolution signed by our city council. So it was kind of the chicken or the egg thing. So, this map may change slightly, while we're out there constructing because like Steve emphasized, these are natural surface trails. It's not like we're coming in there and leveling everything. We're going to use the natural surface. And if there's rocks out there or holes out there, or trees out there, we'll have to deal with those as we design and build the trail. So with that, trail building costs and timelines with our large group of volunteers, labor is free. Just don't tell the kids. Mountain bike trails can cost anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 per mile. But we're going to do it ourselves. Minnetonka is the last I heard, going to be paying close to about $35,000 per mile for the trails that they are looking to build. And we can maintain them as well. So this was next steps back then, but we've done a lot of work, and we still have some steps to cover. We still have to come to an agreement on the MOU that we have between our Carver Trails group and the city. And Marshall and I have been working on that with Steve and Scott as well. So we have to finalize that. And we also plan to get some insurance, and we don't have that quite ironed out as well yet. They need to see the MOU as well, so we're trying to finalize both of them at the same time and kind of juggle that.
We have
there.
received general quotes for the insurance.
Yeah, yes, and I've been talking with a couple different insurance companies to try to get that wrapped up as well. So with that, and I think people have heard that we have a letter from the school district saying it's okay for people to park at Pioneer School when school is not in session and the buses aren't loading. And there won't be a lot of traffic around during school hours, really much to speak of. And I've been in contact with Dan McCormick, the traffic manager for Carver County. And so we've been working on trying to finalize with them our site and our posting that we're going to have both on the website and at the trail signage. there as well. So we've been working on that. And I'd like to point out also, I don't think I mentioned last time, but realize that somewhat recently here, the Sam Walton Foundation did a study on mountain bike trails that were built in northwest Arkansas, around the Bentonville area where Walmart, their corporate headquarters is at, and where the store the original store is still there. But they've done some terrific studies, and they said here that bicycling provides $137 million economic benefits to northwest Arkansas. So you'll see things like, cost savings on health, insurance for people, and just the amount of business that is brought into the area. It's kind of funny. Steve and I and some of our high school group went down there for spring break, 15 months ago or so, and had a great time riding down there. And wonderful place to visit, some very nice trails there. And also, part of that $137 million is in increased real estate values, believe it or not, from the bicycle trails. So they even went and measured, how far or what the price of real estate is, did say like a mile from the trail versus 5 miles from the trail, and there was quite a difference. So it just shows you that biking can draw a lot of people, and businesses and people in general will reap the benefits from that. So with that, do anybody have any questions or would like us to go into any detail on where we're at, or want to see more maps, for instance, or any questions?
Just generally, what's your timetable for starting and completing and using this thing?
Okay, well, we're meeting here tonight, obviously, and then by talking to Marshall, we've thought that if there's a possibility, we can have you folks recommend that this go in front of the city council, then potentially I believe, could be on the agenda for the July 30th city council meeting. Now, realize that, okay, assuming that got approved, okay, then realize then, as Marshall has discovered from communicating with MnDOT as well, that we would then have to sign a one-page resolution and get that sent to MnDOT. Okay, then MnDOT would have to go through their approval process with that. And hopefully that would be just a few weeks from what we understand. And then after that, if they approved it, then it would come back and we would have to have the city council sign and approve the actual LUP, okay, which is about a 7-page document here. And then once that got signed, and then we would send that to MnDOT, okay, and then after that, then we would have to fill out a work permit, okay, and get permission from MnDOT to go out and build the trails.
So you're talking about this fall?
Well, realize a few things, like one thing is we're in the middle of our season right now, if you will, and our season for our high school, middle school teams go basically July through October. So we're really busy during that time, and we practice. Basically, we have practice every other Saturday, including, 2 or 3 days, weekdays as well. So we wouldn't probably be able to get a lot done, until after.
Okay.
But realize the best time to go out and design and build mountain bike trails is really late fall and early spring, before things are growing. And so, there's really no way we could try to finish, this calendar year. So
Well,
we
that's
would
fine. I'm
be
just interested
into,
in when you're planning to,
right, we
you know,
would
use it.
be into spring of next year at least.
okay.
And,
But it would be really nice if we could get started this fall.
Yeah.
Get out there and see what we've got.
Yeah, we'd like to, get out there and lay out the trail and have lots of time to do that and take a close look. I mean, one concern that we've had just recently, for instance, is just the soil content there. We mentioned to Marshall, and we don't really know, and, in the short time that we've walked out there, we saw several anthills, for instance. Okay, well, realize that anthills are not really, you don't usually see too many anthills around these parts. I mean, and so that is potentially just a sign. I'm a little worried that potentially the soil there is sandy because we're seeing anthills. And sandy makes it difficult for mountain bike trails. One, because, they don't hold up very well, obviously, and two, people don't like to ride through sand. It takes too much effort and work. So we'll just, have to see what we've come up with.
So don't tell MinDOT, but we're just gonna go out there and, with a shovel, at least I am, so, and take some samples. That's really what we gotta do. We gotta see what we're working with before we just need to do that, so.
What sort of maintenance is there on kind of an ongoing basis?
Okay, well, if you're talking about maintenance of mountain bike trails, let me break it down into one for the trails that are basically in the woods and one for the trails that are in a meadow. Okay, so in terms of in a meadow, obviously you don't have to worry about trees falling down, but if there's mountain bikes out in the meadow, then you're probably gonna have to cut the weeds / grass down. And depending on how tight you wanna be, I mean, you probably need to cut the weeds down, maybe at least 2 or 3, maybe 4 times a year, okay, in the summer, to keep the weeds down, okay? And so realize, like, if you have a mountain bike trail that gets ridden on an average amount of time, it'll probably wear a path in, a dirt path that's about 1 foot wide. And then what we would do is, for the meadow areas, is go in there with just a regular lawnmower, self-propelled lawnmower, and cut down on the sides of the trail, using a lawnmower that's, 21-inch blade width or something like that. So roughly you'd have, a 4 foot wide trail in that sense. Okay, so in terms of in the woods, there's trees will fall, branches will fall, big and small. And so there you're talking about more about picking up sticks and branches. You might potentially be out there with a small bow saw, a large bow saw, something like that. And, cut up any trees that may fall or branches. So.
And some trails, eventually it'll get kind of cupped, so then you can either move the dirt back into that or shift the trail over to the side a little bit. So
yeah, that's why you want to build mountain bike trails on sloping land. Okay, to avoid the cupping that happens with higher use where the soil just keeps getting compacted. So.
Can you tell us more about the budget for the startup costs and for your ongoing costs? And I know that you said that you would be doing the fundraising, or it would be your personal money, or I think that's what you said. But could you tell us what the budget is to get this going, and then what you're going to need every year?
Well, so probably we're just going to be using basically hand tools to build these trails. So there are basically about 3 or 4 different types of hand tools to build mountain bike trails. But we may purchase some of those, but we really don't need to, because basically the land is not very rocky and it's relatively flat, as opposed to building mountain bike trails, say, in mountains. Okay, so we may have to have a few hand tools, but a simple hard rake and a spade shovel work fine to build trails, okay? So we're not talking a lot about tools. The one thing, probably the biggest thing that will cost us some money is signage.
Yeah.
All right, so like I mentioned, we will have 2 large signs at the trailhead. One of them will be a map of the trail and probably the surrounding area, okay? And the other map will be, the other sign will be several signs on that main sign with things like, for instance, parking information. There's IMBA is the International Mountain Biking Association. They have about, I think it's 6 rules of the trail. Things like, don't ride when it's wet, and walkers have priority, and don't litter, those types of things. And so that type of information will be on the sign as well. So those 2 big signs. And then also we will have signage out on the trail itself, but those will be small signs, probably constructed out of carcinite posts. So I don't know how many of you, do walking in the woods or at parks, but they kind of look like a fiberglass post. And it's like 1/4 of an inch thick and about 2 inches wide. It's kind of flat. And so they're made out of carcinite, so you can just take a simple post pounder, a modified post pounder, and pound those in by hand. Okay, so then on that trail sign will be some information around. One, we'll probably have some signs, just some stickers made up that will show our logo, if you will, but also things like, how far you've ridden your bike or walked so far, and potentially how far it is to the end of the trail. And we will have some different names for some of the different individual trails that will be out there. And so for those things, I don't have a real good handle on the signage. Now realize also, when I talked to Dan McCormick on the Carver County traffic engineer, he was graciously volunteered to potentially use his sign shop, if you will, to possibly produce some signage that we would need. Okay, so potentially one of those 2 main signs, we could have him build the signs for us potentially. Okay?
If we had to do it ourselves, a couple $1,000s. We have a lot of handyman type guys that build stuff in their garages and welders and stuff, so we could actually come up with something ourselves too. So
Potentially, right. And realize we have a potential sponsor that may be willing to help us pay for some of these things. Okay, I'd really rather not go into a lot of details on that right now, but I mean, for what it's worth, I gave them a preliminary list of potentially some things that we may be purchasing. One of them is signage, and we just haven't worked through all the details yet on that, because we don't want to get too far into it. We want to make sure we get these other things done. But even in our MOU that Marshall and I have looked through, there's a lot of detail in there about signage. And I believe I have a copy of that if you want to. Or did I just? I have this and realize that, sorry, a little disorganized, but realize I haven't even looked through a lot of this information myself, but here's an example here. I don't know if you can read this very well, but this is a sign like this, could be erected with, say, some 4x4s And this kind of a welcome sign, or the sign name up there, you know, can be potentially something fancy, or a sign made out of metal. You know, and I don't know if Carver County, you know, can do something like that, you know, for a sign, but it's got dimensions. Like I said, it'd be, you know, with 4x4s and all that. And then here's a picture of a sign, kiosk, if you will, more, with even a roof over it, potentially, like that. Here's an example of some of the information that we would want to put on the sign. Like, here's the IMBA rules of the trail here, and some important safety information there as well. I won't go into the details on that, but that just kind of shows you, you know, and here's some more specific details on measurements even, if you will.
So these are those, what you call them?
Carcinite
Carcinites?
posts. Yeah, these are the carcinite posts, thanks, Steve.
Besides the sponsor that you're interested in that you're working, your potential sponsor that you're working with, is your budget coming from your personal donations, or does your group do fundraising outside of that sponsorship?
You
So,
want to answer?
yeah, we haven't done any fundraising yet, but that's probably the route we would go down. Right now, I think we've got enough people interested in this, we would just ask them to help out, and I think we could cover the first year of whatever we need pretty easily, so.
Yeah, this sponsor that we have in mind, they recently stepped up and helped us purchase some new canopies for our high school teams. So after we asked, I mean, so that's a positive sign that
Yeah,
potentially
that was-
they would help us.
Are you asking for any budget contribution from the city, or the MnDOT, or the county, or any
No.
other groups? Okay.
That won't be needed. We have people that will step up, trust me.
Just to clarify, so where do you see the trail or the trailhead or the signage from an existing road?
Okay, so on, I think we got it back here. So, it doesn't, here's a map here, and I guess we can't
Trailhead
really,
is the green.
so here's a map here. So here's Pioneer Ridge Middle School right here. And I'm sorry, so you guys can't see that very well?
Nope, we have it.
Okay, right here.
We got a monitor here too.
Oh, okay. So, and I have some hard copies too, if anybody, you know, does anybody want, I got 3 hard copies here. If anybody wants to see
Sure, thank you.
potentially there, maybe you could share one, so, it's, I don't know, page 10 or something like that in the book.
So right where that star is, there's a very nice greeting or landing or starting spot there. It's flat, it's open.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a great spot for
So,
groups,
yeah,
small
so.
groups, large
The
groups.
south side of Pioneer Trail.
Yeah, the
Yes.
horizontal
Yeah.
road there's, of course, is Pioneer Trail, and then mostly north-south is Audubon. So right across Audubon from Pioneer School is where we would have the trailhead with the signage and, you know, possibly, you know, maybe from sponsors or from money raised, potentially maybe like a couple picnic tables or something like that. That would be the trailhead, the main trailhead.
Okay.
Is it still the case that the city is taking on the insurance policy, or you said you were doing the insurance?
We will get an insurance policy, we're working on that now,
Okay. Is it,
to help cover and realize, I mean, first of all, realize, like, as far as our team and our team riders and for our practices, realize that our teams are already covered, you know, with insurance through our league,
oh, okay.
so.
So the insurance that the city wants us to get, they decided that we should do it,
Oh, okay.
is basically to cover non-activity, non-mountain bike team activity. Yeah,
people,
so the
yeah.
general public basically, so.
Right. And, I mean, for what it's worth, maybe, I mean, the insurance that we plan to get is probably gonna be, roughly, I don't know, we'll have to see where it comes out, but somewhere probably between 1,000 and 1,500 a year
That's about right.
for liability. So,
Multi-purpose, as far as walking and why? I
why?
mean, you guys, and I gotta say also that, I mean, maybe before I started, this excites me huge. I'm a novice bike rider. I would love to have a place that I could go to that's really close to home and do this. This is great. I very much admire you guys for what you're doing.
Thanks.
But why multi-purpose? In my head, when I see it, I see me in my helmet, and you know what I mean? Not 100 miles an hour, but I'm cruising around these paths, and you know, I'd hate to come around a corner and then, you know, Tom take his time is just tootling along. You know, why the multi-purpose? Is it to increase your demographic for use of the area, or not being
Well,
selfish?
I mean, a couple things is, you realize, okay, first, we think that these trails could be used by other people.
Okay.
I mean, does it bring up safety concerns in some respects? Yes. Okay. Realize though too, like, so there's an organization called MORC, which is the Minnesota Off-Road Cyclists, and they have about 11 trails in the Twin Cities area where people do a lot of mountain biking. Realize virtually all of those trails are labeled as multi-use.
Okay.
And, you know, I've ridden those trails a lot, if you will. I mean, and it's rare to see somebody, you know, walking out there, not mountain biking.
Okay.
Just for what it's worth, okay? But you know, and realize that this area that we have, you know, probably, I mean, 80% of this initial area at least is there's no trees, you know, it's just
Sure.
open
Okay,
meadow.
so it's fairly.
You know, and you'll be able to see, for better or for worse, you'll be able to see long distances.
Okay.
You know, and realize, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, bikers always yield to walkers.
Mhm.
And that's, no matter where you go, that's true.
See, and then when I first heard about your project, I was hoping we may have an area where that wouldn't be the case. You know what I mean? Just as far as there's freedom when you're on your bike, you're always, I gotta watch for this. I gotta
Yeah.
watch for this car. I have to watch for this pedestrian. It just seemed really
Right.
refreshing in my head when you guys first came to say, okay, this is gonna be a spot we can go and this is where we can bike. And I don't have to worry about getting hit by a car. I don't get to worry
Yes.
about getting screamed at by somebody for riding, you know, too fast or whatever, you know what I mean? So that's why I just thought I would ask as well.
Well, we
Right.
did discuss how we were gonna present the trails as a
Sure.
multi-use or just mountain bike.
Yeah,
We
okay.
thought we could get further in any process if we
Understood. Yeah.
open it up to as many people as we could.
Understood.
Otherwise, we're gonna
Yes.
have people that wanna walk it, and they say, well, I didn't, you know, we're not included.
Yeah.
So,
No, I understand that
Yep.
too.
So-
Right.
That's fine. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And also with the 30 to 35,000 per mile that Minnetonka is putting into their trails, just out of curiosity, what is that type of money, you know, per mile being used for? I mean, for you guys
Well,
to come in and,
it's-
you know, maybe it's Minnetonka, maybe they're going huge extra, but you guys saying, you know, we're gonna do this, that's great. Where is that? Where are they
Well,
using that?
So
that
realize
money?
there's a big difference between hand-built mountain bike trails and machine-built mountain bike trails.
Okay, all right.
So they almost obviously, from that price, they're gonna be doing it with machines,
Okay,
okay? Which will be like, you know, small, like Bobcat type equipment, or even smaller than a normal Bobcat, or small little, backhoes,
Sure,
if you
okay.
will, that are only like, you know, 3 or 4 feet wide.
okay.
But there's a huge difference in the kind of a trail it is. If you're, you know, if it's a machine-built trail, oftentimes, I mean, almost certainly it's gonna be wider, if you will. And from most of the mountain bike trail builders, including, you know, the Trail Solutions is, The people that are gonna be almost certainly building the Minnetonka Trail, I've ridden some of their trails, and some of them they have a lot of grade reversals on them,
Okay.
which is like a mogul. If you're a downhill skier, it's big bumps that you ride over, and oftentimes they'll have like big bank turns
Okay.
as well. And those are more for advanced riders.
Okay.
And so the trail that we propose to build will be hand-built, and it will be a beginner to intermediate mountain biking
Okay,
trail.
yeah, 'cause that was actually my next question, okay.
Okay, where we won't be building big berms, we won't be building big grade reversals, or moguls, if you wanna call them that. There won't be big jumps,
Okay,
nothing like that.
okay.
And we don't pay our employees very good either, so.
But yeah, just, again, you guys, I admire you for what you're doing, this is great, and I'm behind it 100%. Yeah, and I think it'd be great for the community, I mean, just to get the ball rolling on something like this to maybe a future site where we could get into talking about, getting embankments and things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, this is.
Yeah,
a great
yeah,
push, so.
there's other pieces of land in this area, potentially MnDOT land, that
Okay.
potentially we could build more trails later at some point.
This was a 10-year?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
10-year LUP is what MnDOT proposes.
Yeah. And I think, speak for myself, but I think you guys are gonna have great support. When you're talking about signage and all this stuff, I think, if you guys get your word out in the community, there's gonna be enough people who wanna use this and wanna do this that are gonna help you guys out. So, yeah, I think this is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
I guess my question would be to Marshall. I know, we kind of had the list of things that needed to be taken care of since, the last time these gentlemen were here, and, I mean, it sounds like some progress has been made, but we're not all the way there on all of these things. You're comfortable that that enough progress has been made that we can go to the city council at this point?
Yep, good question. So yeah, first off, just commend Steve and Tim for their hard work and attention to detail throughout this process. But yes, we're really close, and essentially I felt comfortable bringing them here tonight to get the recommendation essentially from that timeline standpoint, because I feel the things that we still need to wrap up can be done here within the next couple of weeks to be able to position it ideally at that July 30th city council meeting. So that saves us kind of a month or more if we were to delay this to the next park board meeting. But yeah, they've gone ahead and they've formalized as a group. They're nonprofit. Carver Trails, they're really close to getting the insurance. We're working on that memorandum of understanding. Just a few little details there.
We have a website.
They've got a website.
Yeah, so carvertrails.org, sorry you didn't mention that, but,
Under construction, but you can still look at it.
yeah, you can go in there and look. It's under construction, but we've got some information out there, so.
And, I mean, ideally, we want to get all that stuff prepared prior to going to city council. Worst case scenario, I still think we could even bring it in front of them, contingent upon getting one more thing wrapped up if we needed to. So I think we're in a good position.
Thanks, Marcia.
Yep.
So, any other questions or concerns?
I think I'm just so happy about your project, to be honest. I'm so excited to put it with, and get approved because we need that here. We were talking about improvements in Chaska Park and Recreation, and this is great for our community. I think it's,
Yeah,
amazing.
I think it's good just because it's like, it's like new parkland or free parks.
Absolutely.
taking the kids
Oh,
out
that's
of
right,
the
I mean,
house, you know, we're
some
talking
sense.
about that. So this
Yeah.
sounds perfect.
Yeah, everybody struggles, well, anybody with kids struggles with electronics. so
Yeah,
This, we found that this really helps. It really gets them out of that, so.
thanks.
Right, and we have, you know, like I said, I mean, well, our first practice of the year was tonight, and so we didn't feel prepared really to bring a bunch of kids down here, but at the city council meeting, we will, trust me, we will be there in force and with, you know, I'm sure we'll have over 50 people there. So,
I would say I also agree, this is a really wonderful project because it's such a grassroots, effort, and it's not something that we would have been aware of in the community, and you're making it happen, and that's amazing. And then it's also being done in conjunction with Marshall and his team and the city, so the city's interests are being, you know, protected there as well. And I think my only advice is just like when you're bringing this to the city council, like make sure that you're demonstrating the sustainability of it, that we're not just, I can tell that you're not just doing a project like you're just excited about it right now, but it's going to fall apart later. And I can tell that you're here for a long-term commitment, but demonstrate it to the city council with long-term plans and budgets, and let them know how this is going to be sustained in more than just this season and more than just the startup. I think that's probably the biggest thing that they're going to be looking for. But it's a wonderful,
thanks
like
for
I
that
said,
suggestion and
yeah, absolutely.
sustainability
Yeah.
piece. Sure.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I think you guys can safely return. We can continue to discuss, but in the end, I think Marshall was looking for a formal motion of support to have the city council review and discuss the limited use permit. So you guys can have a seat, we appreciate it, and if, I'll throw it back to this group, if there's any conversation among commissioners about it, or if someone wants to wordsmith a motion, we can take that as well. For the record, our resident wordsmither of motions was Nick. We would always rely on him to come up with the straw. So I'm looking around, looking for someone to provide some good language, and we can kind of wordsmith it and put it all together. But is there any other questions or feedback among the group?
I have one question. Kind of on the realm of sustainability, like it's within the city limits, it's owned by MnDOT, they're granting a limited use permit. I'm sure it'll be maintained impeccably, but if it weren't, and like at a certain point we heard complaints or problems, not forecasting that at all, but what sort of action would there be? Or, I mean, it's not land owned by the city of Chaska, so it's not like we can go in and do anything about it, but that would be my only thought.
Yep, so the worst case scenario is if we needed to essentially shut the facility down, it would be on the city of Chaska through the language within the limited use permit that we would have to return it to its original state,
Okay.
which would be very minimal because it's just nature trails. So the grass would grow back in on the trails. May have to remove some of the signage that was placed, but
It's pretty easy.
other than that, it's low risk. Yep.
I was just curious.
No one wants to wordsmith? I got something written
So
down
what
here.
do
so I
we
can-
wordsmith our recommendation?
I think in general, they're looking,
What-
that we support the limited use that the city council, I'm not wordsmithing, I'll just read what I kind of wordsmithed down, then we'll build on it. Motion of support and encourage the city council to review and support the limited use permit for Carver Trails to build a mountain bike trail in Chaska. It's probably not great, but
Well, it's excellent.
you're giving me too much credit here now. So now, okay, so I will move that the Chaska Parks Board supports the Carver Trails and encourage the city council to review and support the limited use permit for the Carver Trail organization to build a mountain bike trail in Chaska.
I'll second that.
It was seconded by Commissioner Ives. Any discussion, further discussion? I'm gonna try to repeat that. So all in favor of a motion of support to encourage the city council to review and support the limited use permit for the Carver Trails organization to build a mountain bike trail in Chaska, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Which now brings us to 6B, Lions Park off-leash dog area.
Switch gears here.
It's just like my dog.
That's a happy.
All right, Mr. Chair and commission members, happy to be here tonight in front of you to discuss a proposal for the off-leash dog areas at Lions Park. And first, I just want to start off by thanking the staff who've been very involved throughout this process. Brian Jung with Public Works, one of his staff members, Scott, we've got Aaron Link here, who's helped a lot with some of the research and behind the scenes, Mary Monteith, who it wasn't able to make it tonight, but she's been very involved throughout this process, and just several of our other staff who've helped out with some of the community event planning and things like that. It's just truly been a team effort throughout this process. I also want to thank each of you for your involvement throughout the community engagement process as well. And then also just acknowledge your persistence and continued advocacy to bring a dog park here to Chaska. I know it's been a long-term goal of yours, and I think we're getting really close. I feel good about that. And then I also want to note that we've also got the pleasure of having Officer Jenke here with us tonight, who's helped work throughout this process as we'll review some of the park rules and things like that. But she's available here tonight to show support, and then also with any questions you may have in the end. So with that, I thought I would just recap kind of what we've done to get to this point tonight. So back on April 16th, we had a joint session with the City Council. It was during that work session where we reviewed several sites to be considered for an off-leash dog area, and we were given the nod by City Council that evening to move forward with more effort at the Lions Park site, which we'll look at in more detail here soon. So from there, staff then reached out and we worked with Hoysinton Kegler Group, consulting company, to start to put together some concepts for that site. And then it was those concepts that we brought back to the park board at a work session on May 14th. We had a lot of great discussion that night reviewing the concepts, allowed us to kind of narrow in on some of the favorites. And then from there, we took those concepts and really engaged the community. And I feel really good about the process we underwent. You know, in the end, this park and this facility is going to be for the community at large, and so we really want to reach out to them and get their thoughts and ideas and have their ability to provide us feedback. So out of that, I know the Chaska Herald had put together a post kind of highlighting the fact that we were honing in on Lions Park, and that generated a lot of comments, a lot of good feedback, which I thought was good community engagement. Then we intentfully hosted a community engagement event. The hope was to do it at Lions Park, at the site, and invite people to bring their dogs. Unfortunately, the forecast was such that we felt it wasn't ideal to hold it at the site due to the rain and thunderstorms. In the end, it didn't, but nevertheless, we went to Plan B. We held it at the lodge over at the community center and had a really good turnout, had all of our concepts displayed. It's kind of an open house format where people were able to view the different concepts and provide feedback, and estimate probably 60 to 80 people came through that night. And out of that, we had 40 people that filled out a survey as well. Beyond that, we also made the concepts and the survey available at the community center front desk throughout that next week. We ended up getting about another 40 people that stopped by and reviewed them and provided us some feedback. And then we also made it available online. So through our communications manager, we put it up on Facebook. The concepts were there for people to see. I'm happy to say I think it received about 1,800 visits, which is a significant amount compared to some of the other posts through the city. And there was a link to an online survey in which we received about another 95 surveys through the online format. And then it was at our previous park board meeting, we kind of reviewed some of the feedback. And it was at that meeting where we all felt comfortable moving this project forward. And since then, we also hosted a Bark in the Park event down at Fireman's Park back on June 27th. Just a great event. It was really fun to see I would say, hundreds of people that showed up with their dogs of all different sizes and breeds. And so we took that opportunity to gain some more feedback and got about another 45 surveys out of that as well. And I'm going to recap some of that survey information as we go through the presentation. So with moving forward, we ended up working to build out cost estimates, which I'm going to share with you towards the end of the presentation. And then, that's what's led us here to tonight. And in the end, I'm going to be asking for your recommendation to City Council to move forward with this project. All right, so next let's just kind of go through the concepts and talk about some of the things that we plan on incorporating. So this slide here gives a sense of where the location is going to be within Lions Park. And it's my understanding that it was one of the primary goals when looking at incorporating a dog park within Chaska was to ensure that it would be centralized within the city. And so we think we've really identified the perfect spot with that here in Lions Park. When you talk about centralizing, it can be tricky because you're trying to find available land. You're also more than likely going to be in a more residential area. But that being said, this site really lends itself to providing us a decent amount of space for the off-leash dog areas. The fact that it's city-owned already makes it that much easier for us to move forward with this project. And while there is some residential across the street, we're gonna account for that by implementing a buffer, which I'll show you in a little bit later on the site that's a little bit more proximate to the residential area. However, the larger area that's more in the wooded section would really not be noticeable by people from the residents across the street. The other great thing about this site is overall it's a little bit of an underutilized area of the Lions Park. So we think this is going to attract more people, and kind of revitalize that area. We're also able to utilize some of the amenities that are already within this site. So if we zoom in a little bit more, a couple of the significant things that we plan on doing is we're gonna ultimately repurpose an existing outdoor hockey rink. So currently, there's 2 hockey rinks. The one to the north has a grass interior. Of the 2, it is the one that's much more underutilized. And so with that, we intend to take down the boards, and we will put up fencing. It'll be more of a grassy, open, off-leash dog area. The other significant thing we plan on doing is repurposing the existing hockey rink for additional parking during the non-winter months when it's not being utilized as an ice rink. So really think this is an innovative idea to repurpose that space within there without having to invest in building another parking lot on that site. And I'll mention, while we think we're gonna have a need for additional parking, just because this site is popular throughout the summer for pickleball, you know, and then in addition, with any kind of new park amenity, I think there will be some inherent interest to begin with. But overall, I feel pretty confident that, you know, the residents in this area aren't gonna need to be overly concerned about additional high volumes of traffic. The reality is we're at a point in time now where there are other dog park options in the surrounding areas, and we think that this site really lends itself to be more of a community-based amenity. We really don't see it being, you know, a major destination site where people would be coming, you know, across the metro to come to, just because they have other options that are closer, more than likely. So move on to the next one. So as we move it, kind of zoom into this area, this kind of smaller, off-leash, open grassy area. Let me go back. One thing I forgot to mention is the second area that we'd be looking at would be coming across the trail and over to this larger wooded section. So this area lends itself to about 4.5 acres. The layout here isn't exact. As we get in there, it may change a little bit. But the entry point lends itself to a really nice kind of flat gathering area. And then the idea will be for our Public Works Department to come in and clean out this site. There's a lot of buckthorn in there currently, dead trees, things like that. So they'll remove all that, create much more of an openness. However, the intent for this area is to be more of a wooded, off-leash dog area. And then we'll give it some time to see how people navigate throughout that area. And then more than likely, it's gonna present some trails for us to then go in and maybe, you know, enhance those trails and make them a little bit more permanent.
So, just for clarification, the trails that you show on there, they're not going to be put in initially?
No, I think
It's just
what
gonna
we
be
probably want to do, because we don't know exactly how the trees are going to lay out and all that. This is really just conceptually showing an idea of what it possibly could look like, but, you know, I think until, you know, we want to keep it as natural as possible. You know, it might even be just through foot traffic and dog paw traffic that the trails just naturally occur. But if we need to come in there and put in some mulch and kind of identify the trail a little bit more, we can do that. So coming back to this smaller open grassy area, you know, one of the topics to discuss is really how we're going to define this area. The interesting thing is, because this site lends itself to 2 separate areas, it's very natural for us to, you know, look to this smaller area is maybe a defined small dog area. And the reason why it's natural is just because, you know, other sites that do have 2 areas have done that. And I thought it was interesting though when we had our work session and there was an interesting thought that occurred that ultimately got us to think about this a little bit differently. And that thought was, rather than defining it based on dog size, what if we looked at it as 2 different experiences and not necessarily define it based on size? You know, so you got more of that natural wooded experience or more of just a smaller open grass area experience. And so we kind of explored that a little bit more further and took note of that as we went and visited other dog parks. And what we've noticed at other dog parks that did have a defined small dog area is that, number one, they typically defined it as dogs being 25 pounds or less, of which, what I'll share with you in the community feedback we've received, we've actually asked that question of the dog owners, and we're finding about, on average, 33% of the dogs are 25 pounds or less. So overall, it's a small percentage of dogs. The other thing is we found those areas to be a little more underutilized at the times that we've gone. And oftentimes there were dogs that we felt were over 25 pounds that were in that area to begin with. So it's just kind of interesting to think about, because the other thought that thing that we've come across is there's other city park locations where they only have one site for off-leash dog area, so naturally it's just open to all dogs. They didn't necessarily have the ability, based on space, to designate it a separate area. So just because we have 2 separate areas, I don't know if we necessarily need to go with the norm and define it as a small dog area. I like the idea that we, you know, present this as 2 different experiences for dogs, because ultimately I think what we're getting down to is maybe not necessarily the size of the dog, but the concerns people have are the behavior of the dog. And I think we can all agree that even the small dogs can be instigators once in a while. So next year we've got a display of the off-leash dog area kind of rules and regulations that we're proposing. This you also received in your board packet to review. So this really is a culmination of a lot of research that staff have done. We've really assessed what other dog parks have done with their rules. It also plays into some of our city ordinances. And in the end, you know, this isn't a staffed facility, so we always got to be thinking about kind of the level of enforcement. And I think the overall goal that we took was we wanted to make sure we covered everything. We wanted to make sure that we're creating, you know, a safe space, but we also wanted to be, you know, general enough so that, you know, we're not, you know, creating more phone calls, you know, based on people trying to enforce the specifics, so to speak. And so with that, we did have discussion with Officer Jenke and one of the community service officers, and we went through all these items, and you know, I think we left that meeting feel very comfortable that we're covering everything. You know, then we also wanted to make it a little bit playful, so we're speaking to the dog owners and then kind of throwing out some rules to the dogs to have some fun with it.
Marcia, can I add one here?
Yep.
A problem I've seen is someone that has a dog on a leash in an off-leash dog area. So like, they'll be with they'll have 2 dogs, say, and for some reason they'll have one on leash in an off-leash area, if that makes sense. And I've seen problems when that happens. So you have specifically that they have to be leashed when they're going into the off-leash area. You have to have a leash handy when you're in the off-leash area.
Okay.
The off-leash area. But I would prefer to see that they're not on leash in an off-leash area.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Why do you say that?
Because I've seen problems with it. So like, I've seen it where one dog tries to play with the other who's on leash, and then they get a little weird, maybe because they're not able to escape, or you know what I mean. They act a little abnormal, and I thought it was because they were on leash. I've seen it several times.
I think the intent is when you're in the off-leash, you're off-leash. I mean, I look at bullet point 3 there, and I think just with, when in the off-leash area, dog must be off-leash, and you must keep leash in possession all the time. I think you just add a few words there, because that's the intent. The intent isn't that you're on leash.
Oh,
I
is
think-
that the intent? I mean,
At least that's how I assume, but.
Yeah, that when you're in that area, they're to be
Yeah,
off leash.
I just think
Okay.
you put it in the words and you just say it, so there's no gray area. Again, now it has to be enforced, but, I think, like I said, you could just edit that bullet point, just specifically say, that if you're in the off-leash, even, it's called off-leash for a reason, they must be off-leash, but you have to have the leash handy.
yeah, I don't know. I think people could read that differently. Like, that I don't know if it would be assumed for everybody that an off-leash area means that you have to be off-leash. I just think it's more of an option. I guess maybe if you ask 10 people, you may get different responses. I mean, the rest of you, does that make sense to everybody else?
No, yeah, I would figure it as an option. I have the option to have it on the leash or off leash, I guess how I would see it. It's
Right.
just that, it's just called an off-leash dog area because it's okay to do it.
Yeah, because it's
I don't know.
different.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, I guess I want to make sure that dog owners have the ability to, a dog owner knows their dog the best, and so I want to leave them the freedom to manage their dog in the way that they know is going to work for their dog, rather than try to enforce a rule. Like, for example, I have a dog who actually doesn't do really well at dog parks, so when I bring him, I do keep my leash really close, and sometimes he does need to go back on the leash and we need to get out of there, or when I bring him in, I keep him on the leash for a little while he meets the dog so I can pull him away. And I would rather keep that freedom to manage my dog and make him safe around other dogs, rather than having to take him off leash just because that's the area he's in.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I just want to bring up the point that I've seen issues with it. You know
I
what
agree,
mean?
it does create a bad
I guess
dynamic.
I've never thought about, I guess, wanting the ability, let's say your dog is fine on leash,
Right,
to do that with your dog who you're happy to let loose.
right.
You know what I mean? I don't know how you get around, just be conscious of that I have seen that, and, I don't know if you end up seeing that as maybe a chronic issue.
Yeah, and I think again, it just comes down to the behavior, whether they're on the leash or off the leash, there's a
And I-
level of
I think,
acceptable and unacceptable behavior, so.
Yeah.
I think the bullet point that says you must have visual contact and voice control of your dog at all times, that covers it. Whether they're on the leash, like you think your dog needs to be, or primarily most of them are gonna be off leash.
The other bullet point that I had a question about was no toys. I was wondering why you decided on no toys.
Yeah, I think this ultimately can present problems, when you start involving toys and then another person's dog is gonna go after that toy, and I think it just sets it up for maybe some territorial situations that could cause some aggression. So we're just trying to say, you can play with your toys at home, but when you come here, it's more about playing with your friends and running. Yep.
Hours of operation, I know in our work session, we had a lot of conversation around that. So I'm just curious on where we how and where and why we landed, and if we're, as we had a lot of conversation as a board, are we comfortable with, kind of what the proposed 7 to 10? I'm guessing some of the police force conversation probably had, I don't know if the parks have a standard opening and close in general either, but
Yeah.
I know we had a lot of discussion, so I was just curious on.
Yep, so there is a ordinance for parks closing at 10 o'clock. And then the 7 o'clock relates to, there is a city ordinance for noise. Not that we're saying this is gonna be a noisy site, but we just wanna respect that there is such an ordinance. So that's why we chose 7 o'clock.
Is there gonna be lighting around the park?
Yep. Yeah, so,
So dusk doesn't mean anything, there's gonna be, the lights come on and everything's gonna be fine?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there isn't gonna be, the whole thing isn't gonna be lit within the park, but there'll be some additional lights along the trail for people, if you're kind of leaving towards dark, just to make sure you can get safely back to your car or wherever it may be, but we're not gonna be lighting within the off-leash dog areas. So I think, again, in the fall, when it gets darker earlier, people, even though it's open till 10, people won't stay there till 10.
Yeah, it's never really gonna be lit, physically locked anyway, right?
Yeah,
So,
nope. Yeah.
That answered the question. I knew there had to be a good rhyme and reason, because we had a lot of conversation about that, and it makes sense.
Any other questions on the rules? All right, so this next concept just depicts a large wooded fence dog area again. Nothing really more there. This area obviously is going to lend itself to all size dogs. And then as we look at the dog park amenities, so the fencing we'll be utilizing is a chain link fence, 5 foot tall. We'll be incorporating kind of the standard entry gates at both locations. Within those entry gates, we will have concrete pads for a nice durable entrance in and out of the area. Also makes it much more accessible. And then there will be paved trail leading right up to those entrances. We're going to be incorporating a dog wash station, so this is pretty exciting. The location depicted on the concept plan is right off of the shelter building. However, we've decided that we're going to move that in, move it out a little bit more over towards the entry gate of the smaller area. This way, other users of the park that aren't here for necessarily the off-leash dog area won't be necessarily crossing paths with people going to that dog wash station. But it'll still be very convenient for the people coming out of this area and folks leaving the larger wooded area as they come back through. And so there'll be a dog wash station along with drinking fountain and ability to fill up water. Each location will have the trash containers along with the poop bags for people to take. So we would definitely want to make sure we're providing convenience for people to pick up after their dogs. We'll incorporate some picnic benches into the sites, along with kind of outside of this fenced area. There's going to be a little bit of a kind of a gathering space that again becomes available to all park users, but there'll be a concrete pad there with kind of a hexagon type bench with an umbrella for some shade. And then with the park benches, we'll also have cutouts for accessibility for those in wheelchairs to be able to access. And then while this picture depicts some kind of agility type equipment. We are not going to be incorporating that into any of the sites. That was another thing that we've learned by visiting other dog parks, is we really didn't see many of the dogs using them. They kind of looked dilapidated over time. And then I actually agreed with an individual's comment on the online survey that, you know, ultimately that kind of becomes a form of training, you know, and as you know, when you're training a dog, you want to make sure you have treats and food to reward them, you know, and we're not necessarily, we're not wanting food into these sites.
It's the human invention. We think they love it, and dogs are like, I don't know what the heck that thing is, right?
I know,
Let's put structures in there for them to play, and they're just like, we just want to run, right?
yeah, and they just end up avoiding them. You know, or you see like the chute for them to go through, the tunnel, and most of them are just scared to go through it. Let's see. Some other noticeable improvements to this site will be the replacement of the pedestrian bridge going across the creek. So currently it's a rather narrow bridge, and we'll be replacing that with a bridge kind of depicted in this picture here, or those of you that have been out on the ravine trails and those large bridges across the creeks out of there would be very similar to that. And then we'll also be incorporating a lot of upgrades to the existing shelter building, make that year-round. Interior is gonna get all new bathroom fixtures, new lighting, new paint, new epoxy flooring. Gonna put on new doors, new frames. It'll get some new lighting around the soffit underneath the roof line on the exterior of the building. We intend to put in motion lights outside of the restroom doors. So really try to light up that area. I should note too that this plan also incorporates a bump out, kind of a curbed bump out along the road. This is intended to calm the traffic coming through that residential area, but it also kind of creates a nice presentation coming into the park and into that shelter building as well. And then signage, we intend to put a Lions Park sign over on this side of the site, and then we'll look at incorporating potentially some kiosks and wayfinding throughout the site.
Marshall?
Yep.
One slide back, you had the entrances and exits to the areas.
Go there. Yep.
And I meant like the physical gates, like with the
Oh,
cement pad.
I
the
see.
gate.
Like that.
Yeah, and you and I had talked about this before, but I would just like to see that we look at all the options and see if there's options that are gonna be usable by people of all abilities, people with disabilities. I've gone to a lot of dog parks, and if you can only get that door open if you're about 6 feet tall and you can reach up to this thing that's at the top and then push down in a really awkward way, and they're really difficult to maneuver, like for anyone. So I would just like to see if there's, I don't know if you could ever find a great option, but just see what all the options are and make sure that it's something that everyone is able to use.
Yep. Absolutely. Good suggestion, and we'll take note of that and definitely look into that.
The one in Victoria is in the middle, you know, everybody can use it.
Oh, I haven't
Park
seen
is really neat. I mean, I like it because it's kind of hard for the kids to open it. Even for us, you know, if you don't used to that door, you know, it's really good. You don't have to reach, it's in the middle. You just have to push like, it's like, I don't know, 2 circles, and I don't know, it's really tricky. So,
It's like the two rings.
yeah, 2 rings, you push one, and like, but it's right in the middle of the door, so everybody can reach it and use it, and I mean, and it works really good.
Good, okay. Yeah, we'll look into a variety of options that we think will work for people of all abilities, and, yep.
Marshall, on the washing station, in the parks you've seen, has the washing station been enclosed in the fence, or has it been outside the fence?
Typically outside, yep. So in particular with this site, that's advantageous knowing we have two different areas.
Right, so you don't have to do two or
So you don't have to go
into
back
one.
in and out,
Right,
and
right.
yeah, exactly, yep. Yep. You know, and the drinking fountain then lends itself to other park users too. You know. What else? As far as lighting, the additional lighting goes, you know, we're talking about kind of some kind of street pole lights along the trails, you know, possibly one right here, kind of in between the two existing outdoor rinks, and then maybe another one up here, kind of at the bend of the trail that, you know, could provide a little bit of light coming down the trail off of the entry. Let's see here. And then lastly, landscaping. So as I mentioned, you know, one of the things we're gonna do is incorporate some landscaping along the street, kind of creating a buffer between the street and the dog fence line. So creating a berm and then incorporating some trees and shrubs and whatnot. So you can see this graphic here depicts if you were in a car and people were over here inside of the fence, you know, this buffer and trees literally, you know, blocks the view into the off-leash dog area. So, you know, to some degree creates a little bit of a noise buffer, but I think additionally it just kind of beautifies the site as well. So I think that'll be a nice added component to upgrade this park site. So as I mentioned, we went through a lot of processes to gain community feedback. You know, just to kind of generally recap the statistics that we gleaned from that, I would say we're at about a 95% approval rating to incorporate a dog park here in Chaska. I would say on average, 80% of those that gave the feedback own a dog. And then of those dog owners, like I said, about an average of 30 to 33% had dogs 25 pounds or less. On average, it's probably about 65% of the respondents currently utilize other off-leash dog areas in the surrounding areas. And then about 50% on average of the respondents lived within within walking distance or up to about 2 miles. So I thought that was interesting to note that a lot of the respondents lived within proximity of the site and are in very, very much support of this. So with all of this, we staff have spent some time from the last board meeting till now putting together cost estimates. And this is where we've landed with that. So essentially all of the items that we're gonna need to do to create the park, along with some of the site amenities, is gonna total to $145,500. And this would be, you know, funded through our park dedication fund. Those are funds that we receive from developers over time where we've chosen, or there hasn't been a land dedication, so we actually get funding from those developers. And then the planned capital improvement there of $42,000 is specific to the replacement of that bridge. So those are the two major items that are associated with the cost. And then the phase two optional items, if you will, aren't really necessary for this site, but we intend to bring them forward to the city council should we get the recommendation for their consideration. And the big ticket items on there are a trailhead kiosk that would be in a line with the kiosks that the city is striving towards with their new wayfinding project. So that was a significant dollar amount. It's about $28,000 for that kiosk. And then the other item would be whether or not we want to consider paving the trail beyond the entry point going into the wooded area on up, going north up to Engler. And so I think that was a $30-some thousand project. So those are kind of two big ticket items that, you know, aren't necessary, so we didn't want to necessarily factor them in as what the cost would be to build this park.
Would that kiosk eventually be funded by the wayfinding effort that's going on now throughout the city, or would that be something that Parks and Rec would have to go back in a subsequent year if we decided we wanted it?
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure how all of that wayfinding intends to get funded, you know, if that's getting divvied up, you know, by the department, you know, so specific to the
Yeah,
trail wayfinding.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, going back to the well a second time, and I've usually not had much success that way, you know, that if that's something that we think we want, it might be better to try to get it now.
Yeah.
Because getting it later is probably not gonna be as easy.
Yep.
If I understood you correctly, the dedication fund is money that developers have paid the city that is sat in a bank account to be used for things like this. AKA, what I hear that is non-tax dollars from residents. Is that a correct statement?
Yep.
Okay. And then capital improvement, I believe, probably would be, in theory, tax dollars that go to a capital improvement fund, not necessarily directly parks related. But that 42 would technically be tax dollars. Is that
Correct, yep.
Okay.
So
I just
that's,
clarify because I know that will always be a topic of conversation is that, well, I'm not a dog park user and my taxes are paying for this, right? You know, you're gonna hear that. So I wanted to be very clear and, you know, the biggest money is really being paid by developers and not Chaska taxpayers, which I think is an important distinction to make.
And the tax-funded things are a bridge and a trailhead and, well, a bridge and a trailhead, which are usable by everyone because they're outside of the dog areas.
Correct, yep. No, I just, like I said, I think that's great, but I wanted to make sure that was clear, because I think that is something that's easy to say and typically heard when projects go in, right? Well, I'm not a dog owner, I'm not gonna use it, why do my tax dollars go for it? Well, the truth of it is, in this case, the actual dog park, your tax dollars didn't go to pay for it.
yep.
Well, and the cost is, I think, so reasonable when you compare it to some of the other sites that we were looking at, that how can anybody really argue about the cost?
Yeah, that's the big thing we have in our favor, is that it's already city-owned land. So-
Redoing that building, would that fall into the capital improvements, or is that part of the dedication fund?
We're gonna position most of that just out of the park dedication funding.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
You know, but overall, I think,
The remaining hockey rink in the winter as well.
yeah, yep. Yeah, and I think
sorry.
that's really the thing to note here is.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said, Sean.
So the upgrades to the building will serve the hockey rink in the
Right.
winter
Yep.
too. So it won't be, we're not solely doing it just for the dog park.
Yeah, and the pickleball users in the summer, and, yeah. I think a lot of the enhancements on this site really play to a lot of the park users, you know, outside of just the off-leash dog areas, which is what's exciting about this particular site, in my opinion. Okay, so just thought I would also recap in kind of an ideal implementation timeline here. So,
Can I ask one more question on that
You bet.
funding thing? The county has SHIP money, and they would foot the bill for the benches without any problem. They've got more SHIP money than they can spend right now. So if you would like to take advantage of that, that might be able to take a couple $1,000 off the cost of this thing too.
yep, that's good to note, and we could definitely look into that on definitely with the hexagonal bench that we plan to put kind of in that little courtyard area, so to speak. Otherwise, our intent was, we actually have some existing picnic benches that aren't being used,
Oh,
that are
okay.
still in really good shape, that we're gonna repurpose to this site.
Good.
Yep.
I had one additional thing too for you. The feedback, I had requested hopefully that it would get published and posted. I don't think I've seen that, but I'm not 100% sure. If that hasn't happened, I think we just continue to try to do so. Now granted, you have lots of different feedback coming in, so how do you present that the best way? But I'm just a big believer, if you're gonna ask people for feedback, that we provide the results so people can see, and that we didn't just take the results and go, yep, that looks good, and we're gonna go do this in a way they can see what we're at done, so.
Yep.
I would encourage that through the social media channels and whatnot, that we get that information out, so people can see what people said, because truthfully, I'm very interested, and I think if you were a person who took the survey, you'd be curious what other people said too.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, I'm ready now.
And that's why I also wanted to recap it and make sure that I acknowledge the feedback we received within the presentation. But as far as implementation goes, the goal is to get the recommendation tonight. From there, I feel we can bring this forward to the city council at their July 30th meeting. And then should they approve it at that meeting, that really then allows us as staff to start reaching out to the variety of contractors to start scheduling the work that would need to be done on this site. Again, it's really estimated based on, weather and contractors' schedules. But we feel that a lot could get accomplished yet this fall. You can see the list there of items that we think we could get done. And essentially whatever is remaining, we would be able to accomplish next spring.
Marshall, do you think with this timeline, it could be usable this spring?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry,
this
this
fall?
fall?
Yeah, yep. That would be the ultimate goal, to get the fencing up and kind of the essentials up for it to be used. The off-leash dog areas specifically, and then if need be, the park shelter improvements and some of the other stuff could be done next spring. We definitely want to build on the momentum and the support that the community has advocated for and try to get this accomplished yet this fall for them to be able to use. So with that, I would just turn it over to the board for additional discussion and or questions you may have.
I do have a question. Is there anywhere where I could see a picture or breakdown, and I apologize, I wasn't able to make the wayfinding meeting, and maybe it was there, but a $30,000 kiosk, what goes into a $30,000 kiosk?
Yeah, we're not quite sure
Twice as
either.
much as the car that I drive, and my car isn't that bad.
Maybe it is.
Maybe
No,
it is.
Maybe Brian.
Really, that was a cost estimate that Hoisington put together for our wayfinding.
Okay.
We were able to take that. Now, you're very correct. We said the same thing. Hey, Marshall, when we were starting to run down Island, I go, for the kiosk, and yeah, based on their cost estimate, that's what it is. Especially if we're only purchasing one at this time.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
So as this wayfinding blossoms, gets bigger, it'll be a bigger implementation.
And just to clarify that would be just for the kiosk itself. That's not like installation or anything like that. That's just for the.
It's everything.
Oh, it is,
It's
okay.
a four-sided kiosk.
Yeah, just
There
pet
might have
ask.
been a
Thank you.
depiction of it. It looked kind of like this, pretty,
Is there gold on there somewhere?
yeah, there might be.
Gold leaf. Got TV screens.
Thank you, guys.
But again, that's why we're positioning it as optional at this point.
Yeah, okay. But I think any
something-
signage is,
something to
is,
consider.
I don't think there can be too much signage. I mean, it's a great idea. I had to ask. Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm happy to see that we've made progress, and I appreciate all the time and effort, not only on as staff, but including the public, and kind of summarizing their feedback and giving it to us. Obviously, we went through something like this before, and I like this site a lot, and I think the community's going to be very happy with how it ends up, if it ends up where, like we've discussed. So, thank you.
For the meeting on the city council on the 30th, are you gonna have some of the board members in attendance at that meeting to be able to support you and cheer you on this thing, or?
Welcome your
I'm
support
not
if
gonna be
you're
available on the 30th, but I'll volunteer some of these guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah,
Yep. But yeah, it's an open invitation, so absolutely.
I'm ready to make a motion. I move that the Park Board recommends to the Chaska City Council that they move forward to implement the Lions Park off-leash dog park proposal.
Second.
I have a motion as stated by Commissioner Whitrock and seconded by, sorry, I didn't hear it. I was looking down. Who said it? Commissioner Flaherty Wilcox to move forward and recommend to the city council to review and act on the Chaska Dog Park as presented. Any discussion?
I guess I would just comment that I like this plan too, and you know, for the 8 years I've been on the park board, we've been trying to do this, and I'm glad it looks like hopefully got it this time. So let's go.
Anyone else? All right, all in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you, and I'm sure there's a big thank you on behalf of Nick Mason as well, because I know this was
Yes.
a passion, so.
That brings us to agenda item 7, other business. I'll turn it over to staff to have us run through that.
Yes, so first up, we've got Aaron Link here, who's just going to give a brief update on our up-and-coming Fire and Ice community celebration.
Gives you most of it, I think. My name is Erin Link, and I'm the athletics supervisor for the city of Chaska. I am not here tonight to talk sports, though. I am here to talk a little bit about our upcoming Fire and Ice Community Festival in Bonspiel that we have coming up the weekend of July 20th through the 22nd. I have been on the planning committee for this event since it started. This will be our 3rd summer that we're entering. And I believe this event really kind of came to life with the idea of combining a curling tournament or bonspiel with more of an outdoor festival to utilize all of the curling center and Fireman's Park together. So it has been a great partnership between the city of Chaska, the Crooked Pint Restaurant, and the Shells Brewing Company. Our planning for this year's event started, our meeting, I think our first meeting was back in January, so we've been planning for quite some time. It is you know, kind of a really big effort between the city, Crooked Pint, Shell's Brewing Company, but then also a lot of other city departments as well. Fire department, the police department, Public Works, just for all of the coordination of the logistics of an event like this. I believe that the curling bonspiel registration opened in March and filled very quickly. So we will have 48 teams participating in the bonspiel. We have teams coming from a lot of different states as well as Canada. We have some teams signed up from California, Colorado, Missouri, Wisconsin, North Dakota, Ohio, and like I said, a Canadian team as well. So our curling center staff have been working on the tournament details and all that goes with that. Like I said, other city departments that have been heavily involved with this event, fire department, the police department, Public Works, just coordinating all of the logistics with the weekend, with the outdoor food and beer tents and the bands that'll be coming in, the fireworks and all those types of things. They'll also assist a lot with just safety for the weekend as well. We are looking forward to a great mix of activities throughout the weekend. We really feel this is a community event that will be great for people of all ages, so we have some great activities planned for kids as well as the adults. Some of the kid highlight of activities, we have starting with a beach bash on Friday, July 20th. We'll have inflatables on Saturday. We'll have a kids DJ, a fun run. We're going to have a Fishing with Friends experience on Sunday down at the park. Fireworks will be both nights. Log rolling will be a partnership with Carver County. They're going to be bringing the equipment to do some log rolling experience on the water. And for the adults, of course, we have all the outdoor food and beer and music, and I'm sure they'll enjoy the fireworks as well. Some of our bands, our band lineup this year, Friday evening, we have the Colby Straka Band, and Saturday we have Critical Mass, followed by Arch Allies. But all of the event details, full listing can be found on the website, which is fireandicebondspiel.com. Do you have any questions?
Looking forward to it.
Okay, I hope to see everyone there.
That's for sure.
48 teams.
It's the third year.
All right, and then next up, as usual, I like to give some highlights occurring throughout our department. And first off, if you haven't seen through the Southwest Metro magazine, the Chaska Community Center in the Best Of edition was voted the best place for kids' activities in that magazine. So there again, just great kudos to the staff that create and supervise the variety of activities that we offer at the community center for kids. And it's something for us to continue to build upon. As far as community events go, some exciting things to look forward. Coming up on Wednesday, July 11th, we've got the Active Older Adult All-American Pie Social. That's going to be occurring down at Fireman's Park at 6 o'clock, followed by the Dirty Shorts Brass Band. So that'll be a fun one. July 25th will be a movie in the park. We'll be offering Jumanji, and that is also occurring at Fireman's Park. Over at the Chaska Curling and Event Center, as we just heard the report, coming up in a couple of weeks, we've got the Fire and Ice Festival we're gearing up for. Staff are also continue to plan for the Curling Night in America. That's going to occur in late August. With that event, I intend to invite Jeff Isaacson, the manager of the Curling Event Center, at our next meeting to provide an update on that event. And then also exciting within the curling world is we were just awarded the bid for the 2019 U18 National Championships. So that's going to be occurring March 13th through the 17th in 2019. So a lot of great things to look forward to in the up and coming months. Thank you.
All right, and then just to wrap out other business, any discussion points or conversation, receiving the city council meeting minutes for May 21st, 2018, or 7D would be the planning commission. If not, we're just receiving those. We can have discussion if there's anything of relevance we want to discuss. Otherwise, it's more about receiving versus accepting or approving. So, anything of note in those minutes? Hear some head shakes. I see some head shakes. All right, so that actually brings us to 7E, which was the amended agenda of replacing Nick Mason on the City Square West Task Force. I can kind of let Marshall maybe give a description of, again, to remind us kind of what that task force is looking for, I think would be helpful. And then you can kind of talk about if people volunteered or we're kind of where we're at right now.
Yep. So this is a task force made up of a variety of folks from the different commissions to provide, different insight. And the idea is we want a Park and Rec representative to be a part of that City Square West redevelopment project. There's a few more meetings to occur. But then the intent is to bring that information at those meetings back to the park board and kind of give an update to the park board for additional comment and feedback as they navigate through the remainder of the meetings. And so Nick Mason was our Park and Rec Board representative on that task force. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, due to his health, he has had to resign his seat from the park board. Thus, there's the need to fill his vacancy on that task force. And so I would just ask that you all have a discussion to see who may be interested in serving on that task force. You're welcome to self-nominate yourself if you're interested. Otherwise, you could nominate another fellow board member if you wish. And then ultimately we'll make a recommendation to the city council to reappoint that position on the task force.
Can you remind us of the time commitment and scheduled outgoing?
So there's 3 more meetings. The specific dates I don't recall offhand, but they're Wednesday evenings, typically from 7 to about 9 in August, September, and October. And then additionally, next week, Monday, there is actually city council work session occurring at 5:30 where Hoysinton Kegler will be there, the consulting group leading the city through this redevelopment project, to provide the city council a pretty significant update as to where that project is. The reason being is the intent will be for Hoysinton Kegler to gather some community feedback out at River City Days. And so we just want to make sure that the city council members are fully aware of kind of where that project is at, prior to getting more community feedback in the event, they start getting questions. But it is their wish that the task force representatives are at this work session to kind of field some of the feedback and questions coming out of Hoysinton Kegler's update, because the city council is really relying on, the task force to provide the feedback throughout this project. They're not necessarily intervening, on the decision-making process at this point. They're just getting an update. So that would be something that whoever is reappointed to that task force would want to attend it'd be a good opportunity to kind of get caught up to where that project's at.
Since no one's jumping forward, I'd be willing to nominate someone. Is that appropriate?
Well, does anyone want to volunteer? We can think about it, settled in a little bit. Before I let you nominate someone, I'm reluctant to nominate someone and how that process will work because I guess they can say no. I'm just kidding. So I guess that's fair, but I want to make sure if there's anyone that would think about being interested. I mean, I will say it's a little bit of a tough situation to jump into because you're going to be a little bit behind the curve, but I think more if you focus on being able to understand and report back is probably more important. Sometimes, like I said, you may not be an active, quote unquote, a real active participant right away, kind of getting up to speed. But I think the biggest key is really just being that voice back to this board so we kind of know what's going on as things move forward. So with that, I will do the awkward stare around the table one more time to see if there's anyone who wants to nominate themselves. If not, I guess we can kind of open it up to have others nominate someone else and see where that takes us. I'll put it that way.
I think if someone's willing to nominate someone else, they may want to volunteer.
Well, here's my situation. It's not that I wouldn't have time, but I was the park board rep to the Veterans Park Task Force, and I really enjoyed doing that, but I would like to see someone else get the opportunity. Does that make sense?
It does.
Even the fact that whoever decides to get involved, I think there's still plenty of opportunity to be a voice, and potentially even just a new set of eyes could lend itself to some new ideas as well. So it's an exciting opportunity.
The awkward look around the table again. Would you like to nominate someone?
Okay, I thought you'd never ask. I'd like to nominate Sean Olson.
Sean? I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate the confidence, Pat, but I'm not sure I can take on that. Someone like I know I can't make it next Monday. I'm just not sure I could give it the attention it deserves right now, unfortunately. I would love to, but I want to make sure that whoever does it can be at the meetings and commit to it, and I'm not sure I can do that at the moment.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Marshall? Obviously, there's a pressing need for Monday, which is Monday, a week from today, right? Which I think probably puts quite a few of us quickly into the, hey, I have a conflict on Monday or everything like that. In addition, I think with the news of this relatively still recent, I think schedules and I don't know, I mean, personally, again, haven't had a lot of time to actually look at my schedule going out that far. And I'm guessing others are there. I guess the question is if no one's already here right now, I mean, we have some absent members who had a chance, I think, to respond via email, but may not have gotten to that time or checking on things too. I mean, I guess what is the step if there isn't a representative? Would staff represent and feedback in, or is that trying to be avoided? Or I just struggle with forcing someone to do something that is going to be a struggle at the time. Everyone here wants to serve, and being on this board is serving and doing that. But I'm just conscious of time and that as well. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but. So I guess the question is if it doesn't happen Monday, there is still some time before the next scheduled meeting. Is there, or maybe if I tell you guys to go home and think about it, it's not gonna change your mind either, but I'm just curious, like, if nothing comes out of this, what happens? I'm curious. I guess we just forego our representative.
No, I think it's going to be important that we have representation on this task force, so, you know, if attending Monday night's work session is what's holding you back, I mean, I think that's ideal, but not, you know, not critical. So maybe think about that. You know, if you feel like you could attend the additional Wednesday evening meetings into the future, you know, that there'd be additional ways to bring somebody up to speed on where that task force is at outside of the Monday work session. I just mentioned that because it's happening, it would be the ideal time to attend it.
Do you think it's possible to have an alternate, meaning that, you know, two people who can communicate via email, which doesn't violate any issues? If someone couldn't attend one, to make sure the other one could attend, because I think that's the hard struggle, right? Is getting it on people's calendars in a very busy summer already, and maybe that's some of the concern. I don't know. I'm just floating options out there as we.
Yeah, I think the task force is already consistent of a variety of people to account for those that may not be able to make every single meeting. But I think in general, we're just looking for one person to be that representative for the Park and Recreation.
I'll do it. My wife's gonna kill me. I will do it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you
I
very
appreciate it, and what I would say is that if there is a moment that you can attend, communicate with me. You know, where it was sitting at in my head was if no one was gonna do, I was gonna talk to the two individuals that were unable to attend today and see if between us three, if we could figure it out.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I think everyone does. But again, just communicate if you know something's gonna commit, I mean, even last minute truth, because I know family situations, sometimes you have the best laid plans and then life changes. So just let me know, because, you know, I'd be willing to jump in if we needed to and just make sure that representation. So
Got it.
do you need a formal motion to, okay.
A recommendation
Yeah,
of
at
city
least gotta
council.
get that.
Yeah, I do, all right.
Otherwise, what's the?
So anyone want to, I am a person who writes things down, so I guess we don't have to, looking for a motion to recommend to the city council that Commissioner Branch serve on the City Park West Task Force.
I so move.
So what was the second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Olson. Any further conversation? Backing out? No? All in favor of appointing or recommending to the city council that Commissioner Branch serve as a representative of the park board on the task force, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your continued
pleasure.
service to the city of Chaska.
My pleasure.
All right. That brings us to agenda item 8, roundtable. So a reminder, roundtable is open. We'll start with Commissioner Flaherty Wilcox today. And any topic of conversation, kudos, concerns, questions, anything on your mind, or don't feel pressure to have to say anything at all.
Nothing tonight,
All
nothing
right.
tonight.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing here.
I just have one. One of the pickleball players approached me and said that the pickleball players would really appreciate it if the courts could be power washed, because this has not been done before, and they thought it would be helpful. I don't know much about pickleball, I just said I would pass it on.
So noted. We'll take a look at that.
Pardon?
Yeah, we'll take a look at
Okay.
that, yep.
I mean, all the rain has a power.
Nothing.
I have two things. First, related to Sunset Park. I've noticed that, like on the Waze mapping application, the park name has been updated, but like Google Maps and Apple Maps still says Veterans Park, and I know we've probably put in a request for that, but I don't know how we track that or
Yeah.
keep pounding them to make it happen, or?
Yeah, it's interesting because like Waze is all community-based feedback, so I think they have the ability to make those changes quicker. We're still working through Google and Apple. We put in the requests, but we just got to follow up to see what that.
Interesting
Trigger
enough, if I Google and Google Maps, Sunset Park, Chaska, Minnesota, it puts the point at a space that has a tree that says Veterans Park, but it actually puts
Takes you there.
it puts you to the point, which is interesting. They just need to change the word, it says Veterans Park. But yeah, it says Sunset Park, 7 miles from here if I would drive, but it's at the right spot, which is interesting. They just haven't changed the word where it says Veterans Park with the little tree symbol for a park. Interesting.
And then the second item, I guess normally he would be the one to do this, but I thought perhaps we should have a resolution recognizing Nick Mason's service to the park board and the city. I guess I'd be open to assistance with the wordsmithing on it, but he was a devoted park board member. I think he's been on for, this was what, his
Be his
Ninth
ninth year.
year,
Him and I were
so-
appointed at the same time, so he'd be concluding his 9th year this winter.
Correct.
So, just, as everyone knows, he was, he was an important voice on our board and wrote most of our resolutions for us. So, I would just like to have his service, formally recognized by the board. So,
Yeah, I shared an email with him and thanked him for his service. He provided a voice that all good boards need. And made sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and stayed on task, and I appreciate that. And, I shared with him that, regardless if we always personally saw eye to eye on the same topics, it was always a sense of respect. And, again, I think that speaks for everyone on this group. We don't always agree or see things the same way or probably have different perspectives, but we all kind of respect it. So, do you need a formal, I guess we can have a formal resolution, or you can just make sure it's included in the notes that there was a worthy discussion of thanking him for his service. But yeah, I agree. I think that's a good thing to bring up, Sean, that we should recognize his service and leadership and thank him for his dedication to the city of Chaska.
Absolutely, and ultimately, it's my understanding that city council will still need to formally accept his resignation, which would be at their next meeting on July 16th. At that point, I think it would be important to, recognize his service with the city and his tenure here on the park board. And so if you have specific words you would like me to include in that packet that goes to city council, I can certainly do that. Otherwise, I feel very confident that they share in the sentiment, his level of service with the city as well.
Do you feel that's appropriate, John, or do you want a formal, motion?
I think that's probably sufficient if everyone agrees, or?
I agree.
Thank you. I had one thing. Just wanted to give kudos to the community center. My boys were both, I have a soon-to-be 6-year-old, end of August, and a 3-year-old, and they were in swim lessons. And there's a lot of swim lesson options in the neighborhood, without naming well-known area swim options that are pretty popular. But great program. I don't know officially what they're called, like little guppies and guppies maybe, but it was the first time without parent. Both of them were without parent. It happened at the same time. We couldn't ask for a better situation because we could just bring them both. But the patience that the instructors have and the understanding and the playful nature, just watching and observing In particular, my oldest tends to have a fair amount of high anxiety and gets nervous about things. And just seeing his confidence grow and all excited about getting his whole head under the water. And then, this weekend at my in-laws lake cabin, he's jumping in without anyone catching him. And, he can touch most places in the water, but he's jumping in with a life jacket and just seeing that confidence. And that's directly reflected in the quality of people that are doing that program and the guided approach. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank every one of those instructors. I thank the instructors for those, but I mean, you see all the lessons going on and the excitement. So it was a great program. So I just wanted to take a moment to send some kudos that direction to the swim lessons program.
Thank you. I'll be sure to share that sentiment with Joe Yeager, our aquatic supervisor, so he can share that with his staff. And just a good reminder that, the thought of swim lessons and, that's a lifelong skill that everybody should have, and a safety one at not. So good to hear.
All right, that brings us to 9, adjourn meeting.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Whitrock. I will second that. I don't think I got on the board yet. With a second by Commissioner Gra. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Nay. All opposed, say nay. We are adjourned.